Salutations and welcome, friends, to the first episode of the Win Place Show, a podcast devoted to horse racing that is proudly part of the Amalfi Media Network. Now, I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and I am so appreciative of you tuning in to the Win Place Show. Today, we're going to be previewing the Saturday races at Parx Racing in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. And they are highlighted by a pair of Grade I races, the Cotillion Stakes and the Pennsylvania Derby. And I have a special guest that'll help me handicap those two races, but I'll also give you my picks for the three other graded stakes races on the card for Saturday that feature the Gallop Bob, the Turf Monster, and the Greenwood Cup. However, before we get to that, I just want to start by again saying thank you for checking out the Win Place Show, and make sure to follow, download, rate, review, and share the Win Place Show on the podcast platform of your choice. We'll have all the horse racing content you need as we provide weekly race picks and previews, race recaps where I talk about what I got right, what I got wrong. I'm not above criticism in that regard. I don't just make picks. I then analyze what I got right, what I got wrong afterwards. We'll also have interviews with prominent figures across the horse racing industry and episodes covering the latest breaking news in the sport. Now, if you've been watching my race previews on YouTube to this point, well, guess what? You can keep doing that because those race previews will continue to be on our YouTube channel, the Win Place Show YouTube channel, and you can find links to that in the episode notes. But again, beauty of the podcast is, plug in your phone, turn it on in the car, and drive. You're on your way to the track, dropping the kids off at school, going to work and back, that sort of thing, and you can get the update on the Sport of Kings. Finally, make sure to check out all we have to offer at Amalfi Media by going to amalfimedia.com and follow me on Twitter to keep pace of the latest news in horse racing at the handle at Failed to Menace. Again, my favorite horse racing note, at Failed to Menace. And I have a lot of great content that I push out there. And I also actually do giveaways. I just did a $100 gift and souvenir giveaway for Pennsylvania Derby. So following me on Twitter is a good way to get entered into those giveaways every once in a while. Now, as always, make sure to rate, review, and if you're watching on YouTube, like and comment with your thoughts about how you think the races are going to break down this weekend, and share with your fellow horse racing fanatics on social media. Okay, well, let's dive in to this huge day at Parx Racing. And this is a race maybe a little bit like Kentucky Downs, maybe a little bit like some of the Colonial Downs or Charlestown Downs, some of the other races that I've been to. This is a track that I think a lot of casual race fans may not know much about. This is their big day with the Pennsylvania Derby, the Cotillion Stakes, the Gallant Bob, the Turf Mile, and they got a bunch of other races there. The Alphabet Handicap, they got a lot of great races, and the Dirt Mile as well, which are not graded stakes, but are really strong handicaps and other stakes races. So it's a really impressive day on the card. But again, people are more familiar with Saratoga, Belmont, Santa Anita, Del Mar, Keeneland, Churchill Downs, places like that. And that makes sense. Those are the big tracks in the industry. But Parx is a great track, and it's got a absolutely stacked card. And obviously some of the news coming out was about Bob Baffert pulling his two horses, Medina Spirit and Private Mission, out of the Pennsylvania Derby and Cotillion Stakes respectively. But even with those scratches, these are still really strong fields, as my guest and I will talk about for the Cotillion and Pennsylvania Derby. But as I mentioned, there are a trio of graded stakes races that are before that. And so I want to talk a little bit about those, and want to start with the Greenwood Cup, which is a Grade III race that's 1.5 miles on dirt. And I'm not going to go through the whole field. I'm just going to kind of give you who I think is going to win, place, and show, hence the name of the podcast. But if I don't give you a win, place, show, what am I even doing the podcast for, right? So this is one where I think, the Turf Monster and the Gallop Bob, I really do see a lot of chalk coming up in those races. I see the favorites doing pretty well. I think the Greenwood Cup is a race where you can find some value. And I think this is a particularly deep field. And I think you can tell it's a deep field because there's no long shots. There's a 10-1, there's a 15-1, but there's no 20-1s, no 30-1s. And overwhelmingly, most of the field is grouped somewhere between 2-1 and 8-1. I mean, that tells you that there's a lot of evenly matched horses throughout this field. And I think in that regard, you can find some value. I think you could put together a few different types of exotic bets in terms of exactas, superfectas, how you want to pair different horses together. I think there's a lot of value to be had there. I also think there's just some value in just some straight up win bets for horses that you feel that you have a good feel for. Like I said, it's a mile and a half on dirt. And the way I have it playing out is I have Sugar Ray 2 to win. I have Seafoam to finish second. I have Moretti to finish third. Moretti is the morning line favorite. And I want to start by just mentioning I really don't like what they did with this horse. I like Moretti a lot as a horse. I just don't like what they did to this horse for this particular race. And that is that they ran Moretti last time out on turf. This is a dirt horse. And ran last time out on turf at Saratoga in the Sword Dancer, which is a stacked Grade I race that we previewed. Gufo ended up winning that race. And Sword Dancer, Moretti ends up getting pulled up, eased up, basically finished this 34 lengths off the lead and runs his worst race in his career. And I just don't understand the logic of putting that horse on turf. Now, Moretti, the one, if you're going to say, well, I'm going to go with the favorite, the one kind of benefit is this is a horse that loves distance. So it can do the distance. That's not going to be a problem. Mile and a half is not going to be an issue for Moretti. But I just don't love that transition to turf right before you put him back on dirt in this race. And the fact that he performs so poorly, I just worry about that. And obviously he didn't wear himself out because it's not like he ran a hard mile and a half with the Sword Dancer. I mean, he was eased up well about halfway through. So, I'm not concerned in that regard, but I don't like that prep leading into it. And so that's why I am kind of fading that horse a little bit. Now, Sugar Ray 2, this is a horse that I do like. It can do the distance. This is another thing I really like, because if you look in this field, a lot of these horses, there's a question mark on a mile and a half. And you have to remember, when you do these distances, a lot of times it's turf horses that do really long distances, that do the mile and a half, mile and a three-quarter. It's not common to see dirt horses do a mile and three-quarters, but that's what you got to see last time out. Sugar Ray 2, a mile and three-quarters, actually beat Moretti on dirt in that race, finished second, and Moretti finished third. And so Sugar Ray 2 can do the distance, not worried about that, has some nice workouts at Parx, and knows the track there. And that, I think, makes a lot of difference because you have a lot of new shooters coming into this particular field and who don't have any experience at the track. Sugar Ray 2 has finished on the board in every single race he's ever run at Parx, including 2 victories. And so this is a horse that, again, just keeps getting faster, it seems like, keeps improving those speed numbers. Kendrick Carmouche is on him, and the last time out that Kendrick rode Sugar Ray 2, he won. So I like that a lot. And then I do like Seafoam as well. Joel Rosario always, if you've heard my interview with Josh Rodriguez, Joel Rosario is one of these jockeys that it's hard to quit. He gives some phenomenal rides occasionally. And I think Seafoam's another horse that has been doing well this year. 2 wins, 3 races out this year, and has been improving since getting trained or getting claimed by a new trainer. We've seen 2 really strong efforts and 2 easy wins. Now, obviously, this is a step up in competition, but he ran a strong handicap the last time out and won by 5 lengths. He's also early speed, and I like that. Seafoam, I think, can get on the early speed and kind of relax a little bit. And for a mile and a half, I think that's really important. So let's shift to the other 2 graded stakes races, the Turf Monster, the aforementioned, which is 5 furlongs on turf. This is also a Grade 3 race. And here, I do like the favorite, Caravel, 9-5, very classy horse, jockeyed by Jose Ortiz and trained by Graham Motion. I was just at Laurel Park last week. Graham won a couple of races there, and that was great to see. And he was there at the track, actually supporting the Maryland Jockey Club, which is always nice. I like Karatari, 9-2 to finish second, and then Belgrano. I think that's where you might find a little bit of value in third, a little bit more of a long shot. But this is one where it's just hard to go away from Caravel. This is a horse that had a slight step back last time out, but has been running high 90 speed numbers, and I think is going to revert back to form. Loves this distance of 5 furlongs, is undefeated at this distance of 5 furlongs. When she gets stretched out, that's when she's got a little bit of issues. But I like this horse quite a bit. And Belgrano, this is a horse taking a step up in class, but I do like the fact that constantly improving speed numbers, and has won the last 2 times out with ease. And additionally, over another horse in this field, the Connector, which was a bit more of a long shot, but still really like the fact that this is a horse that has been pointing in the right direction. And so I think you're just going to find a little bit of value there. So the final non-grade 1 race is the Gallop Bob, and this is a grade 2 race. And this is a 6 furlong on dirt. And again, this is a hard one to go against the favorite, Jackie's Warrior. I really like Jackie's Warrior. And there are times this reminds me a little bit of when I talk about picking Latruska, or I talk about picking Gamine, or I talk about picking even Essential Quality. I think it's become a little bit like that horse. I know that there's always a desire to find value and to go, oh, I don't want to pick the favorite. I'm going to try to find value in these races. I get that. Sometimes the morning line favorite is just the best horse. And you go, okay, I'm going to find my value elsewhere. And you find your value by stacking up exactas, trifectas, superfectas, maybe a small pick 3, maybe a parlay with another race. There's other ways of building in value there. You're not going to get a huge return on Jackie's Warrior. Going off a 4-5 morning line probably will get bet down from there. But this is a horse that's run 2 consecutive monster races, a 102, 107, and has one grade 1 win the last time out in the H. Allen Jerkins at Saratoga. So this is a horse that can fly and beat a really good horse in Life is Good. So I there's a lot to like with Jackie's Warrior. I think the distance will set up nicely for her, and I just for him. So I like this horse quite a bit. So I like Jackie's Warrior to win. As I mentioned, I do like Baron, which is going off at 6-1. So a little bit of a long shot, not much of a long shot, but a little bit of one. I like this horse to come in second. 2 times out ago, had a really rough ride at the Curlin. But otherwise, and I think that had as much to do with really stepping up at distance. So this is a step down in distance at 6 furlongs. This horse is 3 for 3, and had another race that kind of bounced back from the Curlin, won by 6.5 lengths very easily. So I like Baron quite a bit. I think you'll get a little bit of value there, and also ton of experience at Parx. 8 career races there, 4 wins. So you got to like that quite a bit. And then that third horse, Awesome Jerry, that's a horse that, again, I think is improving in terms of speed numbers. I think has been misused at times in the past. I think has been forced to run 1 mile and an eighth, 1 mile and a 16th. I just don't think so. That's what this horse does well. And I think you can find a little bit of value there with this horse taking a step back in distance. That's something I typically like to see when handicapping. So those are how I see those 3 non-grade 1 races playing out. But as I mentioned, I have a special guest today to help me handicap the grade 1 races at Parx, the Cotillion Stakes, and the Pennsylvania Derby. And so here to join me is Andrew Rdesinski, who is a writer for the Daily Gallop and In the Money Media. And we talk about those 2 grade 1 races at Parx. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the show and helping me break down the big races this Saturday at Parx. As I mentioned, you cap races at Parx for In the Money Media. And
Mhm.
so you've been paying attention to this track for a little while. And I'm curious if there are any trends that you have found over time, whether they're speed biases, rail biases, or local trainers you trust that people might be interested in when looking at some of the undercard races on Saturday.
Yeah, there's some good trainer combos and trainer jockey combinations that went pretty often at Parks, like when Ruben Silvera rides for Jamie Ness or Lou Linder. They usually win at a pretty high rate. Jamie Ness off the claim. Really, any Jamie Ness stat, that barn is really red hot right now. Um, Usually like these small barns, like even smaller than normal, um, they do pretty well at Parks when they first start out. Um, but yeah, usually there's a rail bias and there's a speed bias on most days. And in another angle that is good for these small races is when there's shippers from New York or from out of town, um, mostly New York, they don't typically do well at Parks
Oh,
first
interesting.
time out because of the track configuration or whatever. But like horses from like Ellis Park and those Midwest tracks, they usually tend to do a little bit better at Parks for some reason.
Huh.
But other than that, yeah, just the Jamie Ness barn, Lou Linder, some of these other small barns that are starting out this year, maybe last year, they're doing pretty well. And just basically anything Ruben Silvera rides is pretty consistent.
That's a good shorthand for people who are looking at the card because Parks is a track that I think those of us who grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania know a lot about and follow pretty closely. But your casual horse racing fan, probably this is the first time this year they're looking at a racing form for Parks. So that's really helpful. And I did see some statistics to your point about rail biases. That it seemed like finishing kind of in the middle of the track was beneficial. That a
Yeah.
lot of times we think, oh, ground saving efforts. People think Calvin Burrell and just staying on the rail, but it seems like being a little further out might actually not be the worst idea.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously we're going to talk a little bit about the Cotillion Stakes and the Pennsylvania Derby, but before we dive into those two Grade I races, I was just curious because it's a stacked undercard with the Gallant Bob, the Turf Mile, the Greenwood Cup, in addition to several other handicaps on the card. But I was just curious if there were any long shots or intriguing horses that you liked on the undercard before we talk about the two Grade Ones.
Yeah, there is one in race 7, which is the Parks Dirt Mile. It's a $200,000 stake race, 9 graded. And it's a field of 8. They have Silver State in that race,
Hmm.
Warriors Charge, Mind Control. There's a couple other local horses. I'm actually a big fan of the 4 horse, which is 6-1 morning line, and it goes out of the Jamie Ness barn with Ruben Silvera, like we just said. I was actually talking to Jamie Ness about maybe a week and a half ago up at Parks, and they're all saying that Thorny Tail is probably the best horse in his barn at Parks, and the horse is just consistently getting better. This I believe is its first start against winner or not winners, but state competition.
Okay.
Um, yeah, he's ran against handicap races. He's won a handicap. He's consistently right now in the mid to high 90 buyers. Should be close to the lead. I mean, Rock on Luke should be the horse that goes to the lead.
Hmm.
But if this horse gets to sit and it has rated before off the press, the horse should run good, and it's rounding into probably a peak race right now. So a 6-1 morning line and race 7, I think it is a live shot.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, that's great. That's a good tip for our listeners. So I appreciate that. Um, So, as I mentioned, let's talk a little bit about the cotillion. And before we do that, I just want to run through the field for our listeners so everybody knows the horses. So, in the one post, we have Obligatory, trained by Bill Mott and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Then All Worthy, trained by Safi Joseph Jr., jockeyed by Florent Giroux. Then Will's Secret, trained by Dallas Stewart and jockeyed by John Kenton Court. And then Maracuja, trained by Rob Atras, jockeyed by Kendrick Carmouche. Then in the 5-hole, you have Army Wife, trained by Mike Maker and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. And then Clairiere, trained by Steve Asmussen and jockeyed by Ricardo Santana, and that is the now morning line favorite. And then you have a horse that's scratched, the Baffert horse, Private Mission. So the 7-hole will be empty. And then in the 8-hole, you have Always Karina, trained by Chad Brown and jockeyed by John Velasquez. And then finally in the 9-hole, you have Leader of the Band, trained by John Service and jockeyed by Frankie Pennington. So I just went over the field, and I'm curious, Andrew, where's your eyes looking in this field? What horses are attracting your attention? Who are you tossing and fading, maybe, or kind of what are your thoughts on this race?
I believe there's 3 horses that I like here. We'll start with the horse on the rail, Obligatory.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually just throwing out that last race, because of the start. But if you go to her races 2 and 3 back in the 8 Bells and the Acorn, both those races could and should win this race, in my opinion. The only issue is with this field, with Private Mission scratching out, is that there's like no pace scenario here besides Always Karina and or Karina. And if that horse gets to the lead, I don't know if it necessarily wants the distance. I think this horse is more of a flat mile type of horse instead of a mile and 16th.
Mm-hmm.
But if it gets the lead with Johnny V, that horse could go gate to wire and make this, less of an effort than it would have been if it was with Private Mission in the race.
Mm-hmm.
So those 2 horses are 2 of horses I like. I think Obligatory, if that horse runs back to the Acorn, that horse should win. I mean, that horse lost to, just missed last time out, or 2 races back to search results, and then last race just lost it all at the start. And then I also like Maracuja with Kendrick Carmouche returning to the mount, because if you look at this horse, the Kendrick loved this horse in the Gazelle, and then loved it in the Kentucky Oaks, and said this horse was sitting on a big effort, but was a little bit outclassed in the Kentucky Oaks, and then came back at Saratoga and proved herself at 14-1 with Santana. And then Alabama was just a little bit too quick of a turn back.
Mm-hmm.
And now they cut back to a mile and a 16th off a mile and a quarter. And Kendrick returns, and Kendrick's been riding every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at Parx for the last 3 weeks. And he's been doing well. So, and he's even ridden a horse for Rob Atras last week, I think it was, I forget the horse's name, but the horse didn't run too well, but it was a shipper in from New York, which back to my angle.
Yeah.
So this horse could run better and run back to those races that Kendrick rode this horse with. So I'm right now on those 3. I think Army Wife has a shot. I think this feels pretty deep, but I'd rather take some prices. But I also believe Always Karina might go gate to wire here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm also Always Karina is always. That's where I was looking as well. I just saw that early speed, and to your point with Private Mission out, I think Johnny V can get on the lead and let this horse kind of relax a little bit, and I think. That the mile and a 16th will be fine for her. I think that last time out, kind of like you tossing Obligatory's last time out, I don't mind tossing out that test effort last time. I just think that pace was pretty breakneck and a little too fast for her. I think she's better at a longer distance, and so the mile and a 16th should set up well, and she can, like I said, set that pace. So that was one that I liked, and I will say, obviously, I'll just kind of bring it up, but the morning line favorite Clairiere. This is a horse that I do have to admit I was kind of on the verge of giving up on before the Alabama. I thought, some of her last few efforts were not as strong. And then she came and ran a really game race at the Alabama. And I thought obviously lost to Malafat. But I mean, the issue that I always have with Clairiere, aside from her being the morning line favorite, and you're probably not getting much return on your money, is this is a horse that loves finishing on the board, but always kind of finds an excuse not to win a race. I feel like, especially against top competition, and the fact that she's finished behind Always Karina before. I don't know. I just didn't. She'll probably end up on the board. I mean, she's a solid bet if you're putting in exotics on, trifectas and things like that. But I just don't have a lot of faith in her a whole, going gate to wire or winning this race as the morning line favorite. So, um, and the other horse that I wanted to bring up, I was just curious to get your thoughts on. I think you mentioned a little bit was Army Wife. This is the horse that's now the kind of the second favorite in the race. Had a nice run with a couple of graded stakes races before going into that Alabama. Finished, a pretty competitive third in the Alabama, and just didn't know, what sort of race does Army Wife need, or how does the pace need to set up for her to do well in this field?
I believe the Prairie Meadows race to Iowa Oaks would be a race I think that she would need to run similar to today. Or even the Alabama where she was kind of on the lead or pressing the lead with Gaffleon.
Mm-hmm.
Rosario has the 2 wins with this horse out of the last 5. With Gaffleon winning the other one at Gulfstream. But this horse is a little bit, I wouldn't say below the top in this field right now, but I think that this horse is more of it needs like a little bit of a pace collapse to me,
Mm-hmm.
where it can press, sure, but those races where the horse did press was like the Iowa Oaks at grade 3 with only 6 horses in the field, and she drew the rail, and then the Gazelle was a very small field as well. But the Black Eyed Susan, she was had a perfect trip that day, and I don't know if she can get a perfect trip today, but I definitely can see this horse winning at the same time. But I like some other horses over her. I still
Yeah.
think she has a shot. Horizontals, I'll use her, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. This is a very deep field. Obviously all the headlines were about the Pennsylvania Derby, but I looked at this Cotillion Stakes. I was like, this is a really good field. And I think you can make a case for a few different horses and feel good about that, and not kind of feel like you're talking yourself into something. So at the end of the day, do you have a sense of who you like to win? I mean, I know you mentioned Always Karina and Obligatory. I mean, do you have kind of an official pick you want to make in terms of who you think is going to win this one?
I believe I'm going to go with Obligatory
Okay.
because I do think that there might be like maybe Will Secret or somebody might send without the pace scenario there,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe Always Karina can fade.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Obligatory is going to be the one running the best late. And I think it might even be a Jose Ortiz daily double here when we get into the Pennsylvania Derby.
Ah, okay. That's a good little preview. So I will, not picking the same thing as good, media. So I'm going to go with Always Karina. I like that horse a lot. I just like the pace, and I've been watching races all summer, and it just seems like if you get out on the early pace, it's over in a lot of cases. So I like her to win. I'm going to pick Clariere to place, and I have Obligatory to show. So that's kind of the way I see the Cotillion Stakes playing out. So let's shift to that Pennsylvania Derby that you mentioned. And let me, as I did for the Cotillion Stakes, quickly run through the field. It's a 9-horse field because of the one scratch with Medina Spirit and Bob Baffert. But in the number 1 hole, you have Folsom, trained by Brad Cox and jockeyed by Florent Giroux. Then Keep Me in Mind, trained by Robertino Diodoro and jockeyed by Joel Rosario. Then Speaker's Corner, trained by Bill Mott and jockeyed by the aforementioned Jose Ortiz. Then Weyburn, trained by James Jerkins and jockeyed by Paco Lopez. And then Local Horse, I Am Redeemed, trained by Penny Pierce and jockeyed by Abner Adorno. And Bourbonic, trained by Todd Pletcher, one of his 2 horses in this field, jockeyed by Kendrick Carmouche. Then you have the morning line favorite, Hot Rod Charlie, trained by Doug O'Neill and jockeyed by Flavion Pratt. And Midnight Bourbon, trained by Steve Asmussen and jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. And like I said, that 9 hole is going to be empty because of the Medina Spirit scratch. And then finally, you have the 10 hole American Revolution, the second Todd Pletcher horse, who is jockeyed by Louis Saez. So, Andrew, you already kind of tipped your hand a little bit with regards to Speaker's Corner and Jose Ortiz. So why don't you talk a little bit about that horse and maybe a few others in this field that you're attracted to?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Speaker's Corner as my top pick. When I was handicapping this yesterday, this horse off the layoff and as a first start as a 3-year-old ran a outstanding race. Granted, it was with Lasix, but the horse has ran without Lasix and proved itself. And today, returned. Everybody has to run without Lasix.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bullet workout on September 18th, prepping for this race, the point to a Grade I off of an allowance win. Jose Ortiz getting to keep riding this horse. I believe there's, in my opinion, going to be a very strong pace here today.
Mm-hmm.
And this horse could probably sit fifth or sixth and only be about 3 or 4 lengths off the leaders. And if it gets to sit that trip, and, Jose Ortiz is riding a couple of the undercard races today, so he should have a feel by this time. This horse is really coming into form. And it's a new shooter in the 3-year-old race. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But Godolphin's not going to send a horse to a Grade I right now that is very inexperienced unless they have a shot. There's plenty of other races that are smaller than this. It is Breeders' Cup eligible, so the horse is looking to go to big races like that. So it has promise. It's also carrying a lot less weight than some of the horses in this race, with only 119, which is to its advantage. And you're probably going to get good odds on this horse. I mean, you're not going to get the 12-1 morning line. You might not even get double digits, but you're going to get 5 to 7-1. So if you like value, this is the horse, in my opinion. It's run a triple digit buyer compared to the rest of the field, which only a couple horses have done. Has good races on without Lasix, and I think it's going to take well to this surface. Underneath, I have Hot Rod Charlie as my second choice. I loved Hot Rod Charlie before the Triple Crown races. Me and my buddies have said that we had like a guarantee that this horse is going to win one of the Triple Crown races. But I mean, hitting the board in 2 out of the 3 isn't too bad in my opinion. And then the Haskell was a scary race to watch in the stretch because of the whip rules and all that, and this horse drifting in. But this horse was probably much the best that race as well.
Yep.
So coming back off of that with Flavian Pratt shipping in and Doug O'Neill, I think this horse is very tough and should, it might not be on the lead, but it can sit, it can go. It's very versatile. That horse should be tough, but it's going to be the heavy favorite, in my opinion. And then underneath, I have 2 long shots. Either one could be my third choice. I am Redeemed, the local horse for Penny Pierce. The only issue with this horse that is facing non-state breds for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's also being on Lasix without Lasix for the first time. I was actually hoping this horse was going to point to the Gallant Bob compared to this, but this horse is rounding into form. It's probably Penny Pierce's best horse. I had this horse on top last time out in the Stormcat. It can run on the slop. It can run on the fast track. Adorno has been giving this horse great rides, and he's been really on fire lately. So at probably 30-1, that horse is good for underneath. And Bourbonic for Pletcher and Kendrick Armouche. This horse, I think, benefits with Kendrick. It has ran well without Lasix. It has ran well with Lasix. The two bad races were really the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont, where it was just overclassed.
Yeah.
And then the West Virginia Derby was off a layoff, and the horse ran pretty well, in my opinion. But if the horse goes back to the Wood Memorial, this horse is going to get the pace set up, is going to get Kendrick Armouche. The horse should be flying late. The horse, the track kind of it actually has ran at Parx before, which not many horses in this field have.
Yep.
Granted, it was on a sloppy racetrack. It was the race right before the Wood Memorial, and it ran second. So I think today Bourbonic could be sitting on a big effort as well. So yeah, I'm Speaker's Corner top pick with Hot Rod Charlie is my clear second choice, and then some long shots are I Am Redeemed and Bourbonic underneath.
I like it. So it's funny. Speaker's Corner is the horse that I also had my eye on. I thought I have a type in terms of who I like handicapping. I typically like horses with limited experience who keep getting faster and faster while stepping up in competition, and then taking that next step up to a stakes or a graded stakes effort. I just think you can always find value there, and so that was one that I also had kind of circled. I also, along the same lines, like American Revolution coming in from the far outside, another horse that kind of keeps getting better, a horse that, as you mentioned, with as it relates to Speaker's Corner. Also, a horse that probably could run into a really fast pace if Hot Rod Charlie and Midnight Bourbon get into a bit of a speed duel out in the front, and the speed kind of just everybody starts collapsing down the stretch. And again, you're going to get maybe double digit odds on that horse. I don't hate it. And so um, and then I'm a sucker for Midnight Bourbon. So that's the horse that I always will like go to the mats for, and just against all odds and against like all rationale to some extent. I just am like, I like this horse. And so part of it is I just, it's such a game horse, the way he came back after the fall at the Haskell, and how big he ran against Essential Quality. I do worry about coming back on about less than 4 weeks from then. What's that going to, did that, race take something out of the horse? I always do worry about that a little bit. And I'm just curious, I'll again, kind of one last thought and then we'll kind of wrap up. But in particular, Hot Rod Charlie, this is a horse that now has a pretty substantial layoff. Now, Doug O'Neill's been putting him through some pretty long workouts in terms of 6-7 furlong workouts. What's your thought on horses coming off a 2-month workout or a 2-month layoff, kind of coming into a race this big? Is that something to be concerned about? I mean, is that where you start looking at those workout figures, stuff like that?
Um, Sometimes yes, but with this particular case, I know coming out of the Haskell, they were kind of pointing to the Pennsylvania Derby,
Mm-hmm.
so they're going to train up until that because, the horse came out of a weird situation, um, in that last race, but I do think that Doug O'Neill has had this horse prepped and ready to go, and the long workouts are getting the stamina ready and all that. 3 straight triple digit buyers coming to this race is perfect for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about the layoff, especially with a workout exactly 6, 7, 8 days away,
Yeah.
out in Santa Anita, and then shipping in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this horse will be ready. Some cases, yeah, sure. The distance is definitely, I mean, the layoff is definitely questionable, but
Yeah.
I think this horse is just a classy horse and has done the layoff before and done well. So
Yeah, no, that's great. And so you already gave your picks, and so I'm also going with the long shot. So I'm going with American Revolution to win. I also like Hot Rod Charlie underneath, and I think you might have convinced me on Speaker's Corner to put that horse kind of in a lot of my bets as well. So I think this is also shaping up to just be a phenomenal race, and even with the Medina Spirit scratch, I feel like this is just such a great field and a very competitive field, and I think we're going to see some new horses, whether that be Speaker's Corner or American Revolution, kind of come up and assert themselves in the 3-year-old division, and that's exciting heading into the Breeders' Cup. So, Andrew, I just want to say thank you again so much for your time. And for those listening, make sure to follow Andrew on Twitter at the handle at PhillyBoy415, and check out his work at the Daily Gallop and In the Money Media. Andrew, thanks again. And I hope to have you on again at some point in the future so we can keep talking horse racing.
yeah, sounds good. And I'll be at the races on Saturday. So if you're there or if anybody's there, just come say hello.
That's great. Absolutely. Will do. Thanks so much, Andrew. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of the Win Place Show and the Parx preview for all the graded stakes races, particularly the Cotillion Stakes and the Pennsylvania Derby. And a big thank you again to Andrew for helping me out with that. Now, make sure to go to amalfimedia.com for my blog on all of the way races on Saturday's card. That's right. This podcast goes over the graded stakes, but if you go to amalfimedia.com, you can get my picks for all 13 races on Saturday's card at Parx. And so that's a great place to run. And I'll be out there on Saturday. So if you find yourself at the track, look for a guy wearing a little newsboy hat from the 1920s, and it's probably going to be me. So hope to see you out there. And like I said, head over to amalfimedia.com to get all of the picks for Saturday. Finally, just remember to follow, download, rate, and review the Win Place Show on the podcast platform of your choice. And make sure to follow me on Twitter at Failed to Menace, and check out everything we have at amalfimedia.com for all the great horse racing content you need to get you through the Breeders' Cup and beyond. Until next time, friends, I'm Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you that it's now post time.